My name is Kim Maybon, and I am the 2021 Board Chair for the Corona Chamber. Today is a great day, and we have some important updates ahead, and we appreciate you taking your time out to join us today. I'll be sharing the agenda today with our President and CEO, Bobby Spiegel. Bobby?
Sorry, I was on mute there. Thank you so very much, Kim. Really appreciate the opportunity to share some of our highlights and slides today. Our event today is sponsored by one of our newest members, Fresh Fitness Eastvale. And at Fresh Fitness Eastvale, you don't have to sacrifice taste for health or vice versa. They are committed to growing and sustaining this brand responsibly with every customer in mind and with passion for excellence. We want to thank Fresh Fitness Eastvale. Kim?
Thank you, Bobby. The Corona Chamber has partnered with the County of Riverside to provide free disposable masks to businesses. They are available in boxes of 50. Contact the Chamber today to reserve your masks. We also have reusable masks that are for sale.
Excellent. And our next slide will be about our FLAG program, which is our Frontline Appreciation Group. And this is partnered with the Corona Chamber of Commerce and FLAG. We provide funding, we obtain funding from various entities. Businesses can sponsor, and what we do is take those dollars that are brought to us at the Chamber, the foundation, and then turn around and purchase items directly from various businesses, the eateries in town. You can make your donations to Give Big Corona or write a check payable to the Corona Chamber Foundation. There's no amount that's too large or too small. You can text FLAG to 71441. And again, this is a partnership between the FLAG and the foundation, and all the meals go to frontline people, such as the workers at Corona Regional Medical Center, Riverside Medical Clinic, the various different senior living centers. So it's a great program. Kim, back to you.
We are excited to host the return of Master Trainer Paul Webb with his very popular sales and marketing performance training. Paul offers insights to businesses in both sales and customer service and will change the way you do business forever. This program is offered for free in partnership with the City of Corona, but only if you register today, Wednesday, February 17th. Bobby?
Excellent. Our next slide is going to be about our Good Morning Corona breakfast. Typically, it's a breakfast, and we encourage you to eat breakfast while you're logging on virtually. That'll be this Friday, the 19th. The program will be just a small investment of $10 per person. Our keynote speaker is Ryan Kura, and so timely on the topic, optics versus reality. He'll provide businesses with solution-oriented guidance. We will also be able to hear the next segment from Barry E. Knight with a great message for all of our businesses to stay focused for 2021. As well as networking with fellow attendees by using Zoom rooms. Contact the Corona Chamber today to discuss sponsorship opportunities that'll be good for the entire year. We want to thank our sponsor for this event coming up on Friday, which is On-Site Computing, and they will be our sponsor. Kim, back to you.
Thank you, Bobby. A reminder to please use the chat button to ask any questions. Send your queries to the Chamber host, and we will verbally ask the question at the appropriate time. I'm excited to introduce Rob Moran, Deputy Director for Riverside County EDA, to provide us with an update on Innovation Month. Please welcome Rob Moran.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. And I wanted to share one of our upcoming events, and really it's a month-long series of events, and that's Innovation Month. And April is Innovation Month in Riverside County, and it is a celebration of entrepreneurship and innovation in Riverside County. And it's a month-long series of events designed to do just that, to showcase not only the ecosystem that supports entrepreneurship and businesses here in Riverside County, but also the businesses themselves, like yourselves. And so we're really excited to have our fourth annual Innovation Month. This year, of course, is going to be a little bit different in that we're going virtual. While we appear to be moving rapidly to more in-person type of events, we think it's just prudent to plan for most things to be virtual at this point in time. One of the the cornerstones, if you will, of Innovation Month is a county-wide fast pitch competition, similar to Shark Tank, if you've seen that show. And this year is going to have a sort of a tech focus to it. And there'll be regional fast pitch competitions that lead to a finale that will have cash prizes donated by our generous sponsors throughout the county. You can find out more information about Innovation Month at our website, which is rivcoinnovation.org. I will definitely put that in the chat, and you'll see that more information is coming. There's a calendar that will be populated with events, and really our ask for you is to if you have ideas for events that you want to showcase, or you've already got events that are planned and you want to co-brand them with Innovation Month, this is an excellent opportunity to showcase activities and events that the chamber is putting on, the city, you yourself as businesses. It's always great when you hear from an entrepreneur or a business to share their trials and tribulations about starting a business, running a business. That's all really educational, and it helps those that are in that same space to learn and to understand they're not alone. So we're really excited about our virtual Innovation Month for April 2021, and we're excited to have the fast pitch competition. Thank you to the City of Corona and the Chamber for being staunch sponsors and participants. We're grateful. We know we can always count on the Chamber to support our events. So look for more information, and I'm happy to share more information as we get closer. And thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to update the group.
Thank you so much for that great update, Rob. Stephanie, do we have any questions for Rob?
Yes, where can people find more information about Innovation Month and entering the fast pitch competition?
Excellent question. I will post the website again. It's rivcoinnovation.org. There's still, it isn't populated with a lot of information at this point in time, but I would encourage you, as far as the fast pitch competition, I believe there's going to be one of the regional competitions will be in Corona. Bobby had mentioned that to me along with Jessica from the city recently, and I know they'll be sharing that information as it's developed. So stay tuned at this point in time. But I'll go ahead and put the website in the chat.
Wonderful. And when is the final competition?
That, I believe, is scheduled at this point for April 28th. We had to reschedule the date, but I think that's going to be Wednesday, April 28th. Bobby, correct me if I'm wrong on that, because I know you're on our planning subcommittee, but that's the tentative date at this point in time, and it will be virtual.
That is correct, Rob. It is the 28th.
Excellent. Thank you.
Towards the afternoon, I believe, evening, not a morning.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are all the questions in the chat.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you again, Rob. Sponsorships and tickets are available for next week's virtual installation and awards gala on February 25th. I see this says gala boxes are available, but I thought we were sold out on those, Stephanie.
We have a couple left.
We have a couple left. So we have some VIP gala boxes that you might want to call Stephanie right after this meeting and grab those. We only have a few left. We will install our new board of directors and present some awards to some incredible individuals and businesses. I will also be sharing my vision as your 2021 board chair. Use the bit.ly link in the upper right corner of the image on your screen to find out more about sponsorship opportunities or to register. You can also contact one of our chamber staff members to assist you with sponsorship, registration, or to answer any other questions. Bobby?
Thank you. So we have a new chamber app that is now available, and we encourage you. It's for both Android and Apple. You can post your promotions for your business, find out what is happening, and much more. You can download it now and start accessing these new features. And I just want to clarify that when you log on there, it's going to ask you to populate that information because it is a standalone item. It's not, if you've gone onto our website, you need to log on to this and set it up one time, and then it'll always be good for you.
Thank you, Bobby. The Chamber's annual Golf Classic will be Thursday, May 27th at the beautiful Eagle Glen Golf Club. This premier tournament provides an elevated golfing experience that you won't want to miss. We will also honor active duty military by inviting them to join the tournament. Every 40 opportunity tickets allows 1 military personnel to golf. Contact the Chamber today for more information and to secure your foursome. Discounted pricing is available until March 20th. If it's not sold out by then. Bobby?
Thank you so much. I just wanted to now talk about those people that are on the call that may not be a member. If you are not a member of our Corona Chamber, we welcome you to join our Chamber family. It's very exciting to have a professional staff that we have here at the Chamber, each with their own unique qualities. And I want to introduce, and you see the picture there of Robert Yanez. He's our membership specialist. He totally gets, he can share with you where you can benefit, because there are so many things that this chamber offers. It's kind of like a smorgasbord of an event, where if you go through a smorgasbord or a buffet lines, boy, that sounds good, but it's been a year since we've been able to do those. But you can pick different things, and Robert can actually customize things for you, packages for you. So if you're not a member, we encourage you to get a hold of Robert. As well, I'd like to just throw the item out to you. If you are a member and you know of a neighboring business, maybe one of your vendors, maybe one of your clients that is not a member yet, please help us grow our chamber and refer them over to Robert. We've got some great benefits that you can receive by referring people over. Kim?
Thank you, Bobby. At this time, I'd like to introduce our legislative advocate, Jeff Gibson. Jeff keeps a pulse on what's happening in Sacramento and Washington, D.C., allowing us to act timely on projects and initiatives that can help make a difference in shaping our community. His knowledge of complex political issues and the great relationships he's built ensure the Chamber has all the tools to be effective on behalf of the business community. Please help me welcome Jeff Gibson to share about the new COVID supplemental sick leave. Jeff?
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate that. So what we have been working on since the beginning of the crisis is, and Senator Roth was on this call and explained what the legislature was dealing with when the governor announced that his support for what at the time was called 3 months of unpaid or paid leave for any purpose, basically that an employee of yours of more than 30 days could have. And at the time we calculated that at about $12,000 per employee based upon average wages in Corona. Well, the legislature passed that. It's very difficult for the legislature to not pass something when the governor says that that is his number one priority. During the time of the negotiation of that bill, we achieved, as part of the coalition of what we were part of, the larger coalition, achieved a number of different changes that were helpful. But unfortunately, those were backed out in the governor's Cal OSHA regulations that came through at the same time, which added another 3 to 6 months of unpaid leave or paid leave possibility, with the requirement that you leave the position open for an extra year after your the paid leave has expired. So if you have an employee for over 30 days and that employee doesn't necessarily become sick from COVID, but any of their family or any of their close acquaintances, and it really doesn't matter who, because you as an employer do not have the right to ask. They come to you and say, there's been an emergency somewhere in my personal network. I need to leave and go take care of those people. And under both state code and further regulation, since that state code has been passed, they have up to 9 months of paid leave that you are responsible for with benefits. So it's the same as if they were working, you pay them as if they were working full-time in your organization. The legislature, unfortunately, is in negotiations right now with the governor to extend those benefits according to the best information we have. There is not a bill number, but it is fairly well known in the business community and in Sacramento that the governor is in negotiations with legislative leaders. That does not mean Senator Roth. That does not mean Assemblymember Cervantes. But at some point, it is very likely that both of our legislators will be asked to vote on an extension from 9 months upwards of a year. And remember, these regulations are not keyed to the emergency declarations. So they are permanent. So if at some point in the future you hire someone and they say, okay, well, someone in my family caught COVID-19, thank yourself if they say, well, I haven't been exposed to them yet. Because if they say they've been exposed, then they go in quarantine for 2 weeks. Everyone who has been exposed to that person goes into quarantine for 2 weeks. And for 2 weeks after they come back from quarantine, everyone has to be tested on every other day basis, and your business has to pick up that expense. We'll get into the funding that the administration and Congress have negotiated. I'm smiling because I have to, otherwise I would be crying. So the problem with this, obviously, is that you can have someone who has almost no connection to your organization, someone who is brand new to your organization, who can come in and it is illegal. It's specifically illegal for you to ask who in their family or who in their personal network, or have them provide some sort of evidence that they are actually providing support of any kind. They can just come in and say, my grandmother caught COVID. Well, their grandmother could be in New Hampshire, but they have the ability to stay at home and be paid 9 months full wages in return for up to a year afterwards, and have the same level of seniority they had as if they had been working for you all of that time. So even though they may have only worked a few shifts because they were only there for 30 days, we are working very actively in this. It is a very, very difficult thing, and we really need your assistance, because every small amount that we can get this changed, there is almost no constituency that is successful in dealing with this from the perspective of, and this hits every employer of over 5 people. So this leaves very few people out. We have used arguments about two-thirds to 3/4 of Californians are employed by employers of between 5 and 50 people. No, we've used evidence that employers of under 50 are the ones that are most likely to be going bankrupt, with up to 70% of restaurants facing bankruptcy in dissolution. So they're not seeking Chapter 11, they're seeking Chapter 7. We've allied ourselves with commercial real estate. I mean, I don't want to give you the idea that we are in the midst of an emergency and have this become a scene like out of Airplane, but this is a scene like that. I mean, this is the business community is completely and totally united. There isn't a single portion of the business community. And in fact, most unions at this point are even asking the legislature to pump the brakes. The legislature, as it is ought to do, is using a provision which they promised they would not do. If you remember, in 2010, we opposed Prop 25. Because Prop 25 lowered the budget threshold from 2/3 down to 50%. The reason we as an organization opposed that, even though Governor Schwarzenegger and then incoming Governor Brown and almost everyone in Sacramento supported lowering the voter threshold to 50% in the legislature for passing a state budget, was we said, if you do that, what you're giving the future legislatures the opportunity to do is pass legislation that takes an immediate effect, even though they don't have to get 2/3, because there's a rule in the state constitution that an urgency bill, which is a bill that takes immediate effect, takes 2/3 vote. Well, if you have, and the budget takes immediate effect upon the governor's signature. So the design of the Constitutional Convention in California was, if any bill takes effect immediately, you need 2/3. because there needs to be a wide agreement in the legislature that there's an emergency on, or there's a bill to pay and it needs to be paid. Our argument against lowering the threshold on the budget was that because the budget takes immediate effect, you're going to start legislating through the budget. And the budget is just something that you announce your bills and you announce how you're going to pay your bills. That's what the budget was designed for and operated as for 110 years. Unfortunately, this negotiation is occurring as part of the budget. And what the proposal is that the leave provision will be added as a quote unquote early part of the budget, so it can take effect at any moment. As we saw with the minimum wage provisions, if you remember, we were supposedly in the midst of a minimum wage emergency, apparently, and that needed to be voted on at midnight on a Sunday. And that it was never going to go higher than $11 an hour. Of course, we're now at 13, going on our way to 15, well on our way to 20. And so this is where we are now in terms of a budget can be negotiated behind closed doors with just the leadership and the legislative leadership and the governor, if that's what they're willing to do. Apparently, that is what they're doing right now from the best of everything that I can tell you. So I can't come to you and say it's ABXXX and call your legislature. But we do need you to call and contact your legislators. We do need you to join with us in our letter writing campaign. It's extremely important. We have signed on to a letter that has been signed by every business group. And there are business groups from the left, the right, the center, Northern California, Central California, Southern California, because businesses, and we don't need to sell this part. Everyone understands this. All you have to do is drive down Main Street or any street in Corona and see empty storefronts. Those aren't jokes. Those aren't figments of our imagination. This is a very serious pandemic. The governor is taking an approach to reopening this economy where we are the slowest to reopen. That's an entirely different policy question that will probably be on your ballot in August or September. I don't even know how to spell recall. Does anyone else? So that's where we are on that piece of legislation. We've even presented as a coalition to the governor's office that independent of the cost to individual businesses, that unscheduled absences, and I'm sure we could sing chapter and verse on this on the call, cost businesses each year $3,600 per employee on average. And they hit small businesses even more. So understand that we are after this. We are working on this extremely hard. I like to throw in a little bit of humor or try and provide you with some evidence that the world is not caving in around you. Unfortunately, that's very difficult. Moving from the ridiculous to the sublime, in Washington, D.C., the Congress and the president have announced a tentative deal on a $1.9 trillion COVID aid package. Now, the previous COVID aid packages have focused almost exclusively on small business assistance through through setting up the PPP program and other programs, extending personal assistance to American families in broad strokes, and then providing things like emergency unemployment assistance or COVID assistance to states. In the state of California instance, the state received $118 billion, which is not a small amount of money, into our EDD unemployment program. According to the state legislative analyst, 31 billion of it was lost to fraud, which accounts for 92% of the fraud in unemployment programs in the United States of America. $31 billion is more than we have spent on roads in the state of California in the last 12 years, to give you an idea of how much money that is out of the state budget. And the woman that is running that program for the state of California was just nominated to be the #2 person at the Federal Department of Labor And in her opening comments, she said she was going to bring the reforms that have made California so successful to the US. So we will be tracking that as it develops. So we're at 1.9 trillion. So back to the COVID relief package. So I want you to remember the name of the bill is the COVID Emergency Relief Package, leading you to believe that $1.9 trillion is going to be spent on actual COVID relief, vaccines, direct expenses for people that have been out of work for 10 months, etc. Well, you dig into the bill and almost immediately you find out that, well, $350 billion is actually offered in aid to state and local governments. So about 19%. So about 81% of the bill does not pay for vaccines or anything that would actually touch your life. About 19% of it is accorded to state and local governments to do things like distribute vaccines and to do other items. Well, then you dig into what is accorded for state aid, because there's obviously federal strings on what the state can do. And then you realize, well, no, they're paying local governments who are actually the least attenuated to do widespread vaccine distribution. It's just not something that local governments that are focused on public safety or making sure that our water systems run or any of that. So most of the vaccination distribution funds are focused in the local government agencies, which have about $15 billion. Now, $15 billion, if it were in your bank account or my bank account, sounds fantastic. But when you realize that about the agencies that are in competition for those funds number about 300 million residents, that means that out of that $1.9 trillion, about $50 per person, if it is efficiently, if every single dollar went into the distribution of vaccinations, services, and PPE efficiently, that would be $50 per person. Now, when you break that down precisely how the government agency, how this operates, and if you've been on our Washington, D.C. trip, and you've been on our Sacramento trip, in Sacramento before we go in the Capitol, usually I say, okay, now 50 cents of every dollar that enters this building via our wallets never makes it out because it goes to the many buildings around the Capitol that are sheathed in marble and glass. Because 50 cents of every dollar that we pay to the state government gets lost into bureaucracy, while 70% of the money that we pay to the federal government gets lost to bureaucracy. So on our best possible day, the most that we're going to be seeing on vaccines out of this package is $50 per person. Each vaccine to make, deliver, and then actually give to people, because what we're trying to do, whether you agree with vaccines or not, the policy that the state of California has laid out is that we will begin to reopen and recognize our state as we recognized it in February of 2020. From 1850 to February 2020, we will start to get back to that level of economic freedom and capacity once we have achieved what is known as herd immunity. We've all heard herd immunity. That goalpost is actually moving as well. Well, if this bill of $1.9 trillion, which, by the way, is the equivalent of almost all of the government spending during the Reagan administration. So to give you an idea, this is a big bill. We defeated the Soviet Union using that amount of money. So this is not an inconsequential piece of legislation. This is a major piece of legislation. At the end of the day, Congress is finding it so important to get to herd immunity that they are according 1/3 of the funding necessary to get you one of two shots. I'm trying to get it on my camera there. There are 2 shots required. They're giving you 1/3 of 1 shot. So, and then clapping their hands together and saying, good job. All right, move on. So that is the level of complexity that we face in representing you of trying to go back and saying, okay, look, you have set a very high goalpost for what herd immunity means. It is a historically high goalpost. Herd immunity is achieved all the time. It's achieved every year during cold and flu season. Why does cold and flu season end? We've achieved herd immunity. And to achieve herd immunity in almost any other disease, it takes roughly 15% or 20% of residents to achieve vaccination, to be vaccinated. And that goes for almost any disease. We achieved herd immunity to polio with 45 to 50% of people vaccinated. So obviously we are all vaccinated against polio. This is not anti-vax. I'm trying to describe to you how far this goalpost is for getting back to where we were where you could recognize the level of economic opportunity. I'm not saying it should be any different. I'm just trying to help you understand so that you can then say, okay, how likely is it in June? How likely is it in August? How likely is it in December? So that you could make learned economic decisions for yourself, which is what we try and do here at the Chamber, is be able to tell you, yeah, taxes are really high in California and we're doing everything we can to lower them, but that's what we're trying to do here. So the national standard currently for herd immunity is 80% vaccinations. You're hearing a lot, you're likely hearing a lot, but that will take until September or October or November. In November, before the election, when this bill was proposed, it had in it a provision, for instance, that was with bipartisan support of $2,000 in a one-time payment to every American for as an economic stimulus, much like many of us received assistance previously. The then candidate, now president, proposed actually making that $2,000 per month for the rest of the emergency and then some period of time afterward. And so in this bill, though, there is a $1,400 one-time payment that if the bill passed in March, it would be available sometime in July. So there are a number of things in this bill that are not as presented. So what we're trying to let you know is that if you take the funding that was in this bill for vaccinations, for actually delivering the vaccination to you, not vaccination research, not any of the other pieces of the puzzle, but actually because the step that the governor and the president have said is necessary to achieve herd immunity, we can all clap our hands together as a country and start to widely reopen as is well underway in 37 states, that we can widely reopen here in California, that the powers that be want to see a 70% vaccination rate. Well, if we're going to get there, it is going to require roughly $1.9 trillion in vaccination funds based on current budgets. So if you pass a $1.9 trillion vaccination fund or a COVID aid package, and you only accord funding for 1/3 of one of the two required shots, you're not going to get to 70 to 80% very quickly. And that's the concern that we have, is we'll have policy debates on whether or not we should be closed, and we'll participate in those on your behalf and ask you and get your opinion and then go represent that. But once those policies have been announced, then we want to work with government, engage with them so we can get to that policy goal as soon as possible. And if as soon as possible only shows up with 1/3 of 1/2 of the cure, what we're trying to tell you is December is either something's got to give. Either there's going to be more very large bills, and all of this is deficit spending, which is a total another discussion. But there are either going to be a lot more very large bills, or there's going to be a very large bill for you as an employer, because someone is going to turn to you and say, okay, we want to reopen, Mr. and Mrs. Employers. So vaccinate here are the vaccines that are available, and here's the cost to your business, and have at it. You make your own economic decision. And that is not what has been proposed at any point during the discussion of how we recover back to where we had what we would consider an open economic market under any condition. So those are our concerns. So you're going to see a lot of backlash. The administration's already facing a lot of backlash on the bill from people that wanted the $2,000 check as opposed to $1,400. You can imagine there's a lot of consternation over that. It's not abstract. It's not really a political discussion when you have deep double-digit unemployment in large urban states. So in any case, happy to answer any questions that you may have or any comments. I notice I think there's 23 comments or questions in the chat bar, and I kind of had an impression that today was not going to go very well. When on Sunday I got a emergency email asking me to be on a Monday morning phone call with every other business lobbyist in the state of California. So that's where we are, and we're going to continue to fight for you. So.
Thank you, Jeff, for bringing this to our attention. There are no words for what they're trying to do. Stephanie, do we have any questions for Jeff?
Yes, we have several. So we'll start off with, there was a White House briefing last week where they announced that fully vaccinated employees would not need to quarantine. How would this play into the extended sick leave proposal?
It has nothing to do with the extended sick leave proposal. It's not sick leave. This is paid family leave. Sick leave is in addition to this. So you have an employee, a perfectly healthy employee. They've been vaccinated. Everyone they know has been vaccinated. Someone across the street from them that their uncle has been caring for gets COVID. And they decide, okay, well, my uncle needs assistance in caring for his neighbor. All right. Well, that under the bill and under the Cal OSHA standards, he can that employee, brand new employee to you hired him. You hired this person because specifically they were vaccinated, and they seemed like they were very on top of it. They were very close to their family. They've been in your employ for the 4 weeks, and they're still in training. They come to you and go, "Oh God, my family needs me. My uncle's really been affected by COVID. I've got to go." Okay. You can't follow up and say, does your uncle have COVID? No. And they are entitled to 9 months, in addition to their sick leave, in addition to their vacation leave, in addition to all their other leaves. If they've been enrolled in your medical program, in your medical insurance, then they get medical insurance too. And as far as your HR purposes are concerned, they are your employee, accruing sick leave, vacation time, straight through. So yeah, it doesn't affect their sick leave at all. So unfortunately, yeah, it's entirely different. And it's not, if they catch COVID, then there's an entirely different perspective. And then you fall under the Cal OSHA regulations that require that you test, that you obviously quarantine. Some of them are common sense. You quarantine people that had been around them. And then some of them are very, very restrictive and to the point of being punitive, where you have to test every employee in your organization, whether or not they were exposed to the person, twice a week for several weeks. So, yep.
So all this extra leave stuff, somebody asked, isn't this a reason not to get the vaccine with all these extra benefits? Like,
well,
from the employee standpoint?
Sure. Well, see, and this becomes part of the political debate, right? What you need to kind of take two steps in your mind, okay? The vaccination portion of this is totally independent. COVID is totally independent of the Family Leave Act of this, because it's not just COVID. In the future, if we have an incredibly bad flu season, and the governor issues, as governors do from time to time, of emergency in an emergency order, where kids with basically in an emergency order can be kids with colds have to stay home, right? Or daycares that have 10 cases of the flu have to shut down and be sanitized. Those are emergency orders that are issued all the time by governors and counties, etc. If that were to happen in the future under these regulations, they fall under the same thing. Oh my gosh, my uncle's neighbor has a cold, and he's a caregiver for them. I need to go now, and I will come back when it's appropriate, and just send my checks to my house. COVID is the discussion that we're currently in, but these have to deal with the ability of the governor to declare an emergency and then have a whole set of things show up. The employee themselves does not need to be sick and doesn't even need to be exposed to COVID and doesn't have to provide you with any evidence. So it is entirely permissive to the employee. And further, they can take you to arbitration if you ask too many questions. So yeah, this is why independent of vaccine. I know we have a lot of members that have very strong opinions on both sides of the vaccination question. But anyway, go ahead, Stephanie. Sorry.
You're good. I had a couple different questions regarding a letter to sign on to support opposing this. Is there a letter that we can pass on to our members, or is there going to be like a one-click setup? Also, is there a way to get your talking points from today's session?
Sure. So there's 2 slides. I sent to Stephanie very late because unfortunately these things break very late and are on an ongoing basis. So I'd be happy to have her distribute those. The second is we have a letter, Stephanie, from Cal Chamber. You can put that up as an example. That would be the letter that we're initially asking people to join with us and just let us know, so we can just let the Cal Chamber know, hey, we have 100, we have 10 members, we have 15 members, we have 20 members that want to sign this individually as well. So that's very welcome. And then as this emerges, it will show up in an actual piece of legislation, hopefully. It has to be in print for 72 hours. During that time, we likely would set up, or Cal Chamber would set up, a one-click scenario in which you could deal with that. But currently, this is a proposal, and yeah, if you were to call your legislator at this point, and they're trained to ask, well, what piece of legislation are you calling about? Which is a very reasonable thing to ask. You would have to say that please let the current family leave system work. It is a brand new system. It has only been in existence since January 1st. Please let it work. Do not expand it until further notice. And that is literally the message. Just say, I don't have any legislative piece. I don't have any legislation to recite, because I know the governor's announced this, that he's in negotiations with the legislative leaders under the Budget Act, which is, like I said, precisely what we said back in 2010 was an opportunity. And Jerry Brown and the legislative leaders at the time, several of whom are still legislative leaders, said we would never, ever, ever use the budget for policy. Well, we know that they do. So anyway.
Well, that takes us really well into the next question. If all the business associations are opposing the governor's COVID proposal, who is supporting this? Like, who's pushing this?
The governor. Frankly, the guy with the pen and the guys with votes. The governor, the state legislature, people that are the activists that are in favor of a national and state guaranteed income, a whole host of activist groups that are really ultimately after setting up a permanent system of guaranteed national income, and are looking at you may have seen the governor saying restart better, or rebuild California better, or build back better. Those were some of those things. This is precisely what he was talking about. Building back better puts the employee in charge of their job, and you foot the bill. And instead of there being an employee-employer relationship that's between two people, they want a mitigated relationship where there's three involved, and there's the employee, their representative in the government, and then the employer. And that's really who's in favor of this. So there are some trade unions that are opposed or are concerned that at some point you start to, as Margaret Thatcher said, the best thing about that socialism works great until the people that pay for it run out of money. But and she would have known, because she took over a country that was 92% socialized at the time. So, I mean, that's just kind of where we're at, unfortunately, and this is a problem that has been going on in California for generations. We pass a piece of landmark legislation, it gets a bunch of good press, it gets everyone within the Capitol Dome applauds wildly, and then the legislature the next year, even before the big program is introduced, wants to then expand it. You're like, well, let's wait and see. I mean, let's see if it works, and if it needs any expansion, or if it needs a small change here or there. That's what we're in now on paid leave. But it's such a huge program, and again, it doesn't. No one has to get sick. No one that you would know or employ has to get sick for you to be damaged by this, and that's the concern.
Thank you.
I can see Elaine Norland's glee at sorry, Elaine. I can see your glee in this. So anyway, go ahead, Stephanie.
Okay, next question. One of the things that you talked about in the 1.9 trillion bill was that local governments like the city of Corona would be competing for this fund that would equate to about $50 per person nationally. Is that local governments over a certain population?
Over the 50 United States of America for locations that for cities that have populations of over 50,000 residents. So I haven't read my map this morning, but I'm pretty sure that's a lot of cities. In the bill, they discuss that that's about 300 million residents in those 50 states. There are states, like we've talked about when we've gone to Indiana or we've gone to Washington, D.C., there are states that realize, okay, I'm a Republican from Indiana. I serve with Democrats from Indiana. But the thing that we have in common is we are from Indiana. So we are going to fight for funding for Indiana. And then they go after that. So that's the piece of that puzzle. So that's where we're up against, because there are very few Californians that get to Washington and aren't Republican first or Democrat first. And then they don't work with each other as well. So we are advocating as best we can for Corona, but yeah, there's a big task ahead on that.
Thank you. Are there any tax credits to help pay for part or all of the family leave?
Nope, absolutely none. In fact, most tax credits were suspended. The governor is looking at re-adding some, but in the June 2020 budget, most, if not all, tax credits in the state of California for businesses were suspended. They're looking at adding about 10% of those back, but no. In fact, specifically, government is barred from participating in that. One of the lobbying points that we have tried to show you how far down the track this is that we're asking for government to pay for any expansion of family leave. Now, of course, anyone who has graduated the third grade can tell you that government does not produce its own money, but it collects the money that we pay through taxes. So in effect, it's spreading out the pain, just not from employers, but no, there are no tax credits. And really there are very few, if any, active tax credits currently in the state of California for any purpose.
Jeff, how is this financially sustainable for businesses, and what controls are in place to prevent abuse and fraudulent claims?
Well, as we've seen with unemployment, the unemployment system, where $118 billion was given to the unemployment system in California by the federal government in 2020, and 31 billion of it was lost. And the shock and dismay of that $31 billion loss led to Julie Su, who was in charge of it, and said that she was in charge during that loss, which is the single largest loss of state funds in American history, barely beating our annual loss of $1 out of $3 that we put into the Medi-Cal system to fraud. But she is now appointed to be the number 2 person at the Department of Labor, who will actually be according all of the unemployment funds nationally. There are cases where there are people, almost 100% of that fraud either went to people that are in prison in the state of California. And so we're being sent checks, large checks, into San Quentin, into death row. And so it has to pass through government employee hands going, why is someone who is on death row getting an EDD check? And we're sending checks to Nigeria. We're sending checks abroad to dozens and dozens of countries. So there's no requirement for, and if you put in a computer program that said no one that has a zip code that doesn't start with 9 qualifies, doesn't qualify for this program, you would have eliminated at least 60% of the fraud. Because how can you possibly be unemployed in a COVID era and be abroad, except in, a very few small handful of cases. So, I mean, there's just no way but no, there is no cap for loss. And obviously there isn't much consequence if the person in charge of it in California is now going to be in charge of the entire system in Washington, D.C.
Wow. Next question. Under these herd immunity guidelines, can an employer force employees to get vaccinated?
No. And you don't want to even get into that. No. Offer it if you feel so. My advice, and I am not a lawyer, but I don't know of any HR situation where the state of California does not require the vaccination. And I don't know of any time. There are vaccination requirements for kids going into schools in California. California is one of the few states that requires that. Interestingly, that does not have a net effect on lowering the incidence of childhood diseases in California, but the state has certain requirements. But you requiring an employee to do that, please don't take that as my advice. No, herd immunity would require hundreds of millions of people to participate in that. And again, there has never been there isn't a statistical point at which Dr. Fauci rings a bell and we have achieved herd immunity. Herd immunity is kind of like diagnosing a recession once you're in it. You know what it feels like, but in large part because you're not in a very good economic situation. COVID just goes away. Not to quote the previous president, but that's kind of how that is, right? We know when we're out of flu season because we don't hear a lot of hacking and coughing, and everybody's kind of out in the sunshine. I mean, that's kind of how herd immunity typically works. And then there's a scientific definition of it after that fact. But in any case, but please, yeah, don't take anything I'm saying as you must force your employees to be vaccinated, because that just opens up a different kettle of fish.
Thank you. For clarification, these proposed new extended leave rules would be enacted during any declared emergency. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Cal OSHA rules are specific to emergencies. They're not specific to the current Cal OSHA or the current COVID emergency. So they're being reported as they're being specific. They're not specific. It's during a health emergency. And then on top of that, there are regulations for getting COVID tested, etc.
Thank you. If the recall is successful, can any of the governor's ideas like this one be revoked immediately by his successor?
Yes. Yeah. Any executive order, as we have seen with the 48 executive orders that the new president has issued, which, by the way, eclipse any annual total for any of his predecessors. And he's been in office for 2 months. That an executive order only has the weight of law until a new executive under any circumstance. If you remember, the gas tax was implemented by executive order of Gray Davis and was rescinded by on his first act of office by Governor Schwarzenegger. So yes, yeah, they definitely can be under any circumstance. So, and we do have a precedent with a recall.
Thank you. Okay, this is going to be the final question.
Sure.
So, should several employees leave due to COVID issues and new employees must be hired, could the new temporary employees also go out on the same leave, requiring a new round of hiring temporary employees? That means, in theory, paying 3 times. And is there any thought to how that can be passed on?
That's precisely one of the problems. And the problem that ends up happening is that is the ability of those employees to return. So say in the unfortunate situation that you just proposed, you had 2 sets of employees go out, and those employees actually go out and they find another job, but they don't follow up with you to say, hey, don't leave my position open, or I give up my right of return. They still have a right of return. They could go to the other job and decide that they don't like it there, or they could go and be having that job cover their care for their uncle and come back to your job. And now you have to find a place for them because they have a right to return of up to a year. So these are the problems that we sympathize with and we work every day to deal with. But no, there is no provision. If you can pass that along to your in your prices, unfortunately, or your services, or however your business is operating, obviously the market, you're in a competitive market, so that becomes very difficult. But yeah, that's just one of those things that's going to be passed along to you, and there you go. I mean, that's one of the joys of holding a business license.
So you're basically saying that somebody could get a job, leave the job, and go to another job, leave that one, and kind of like be paid by multiple employers for the same thing?
Potentially. And the provision in there that polices that is very, very weak because who reports it? If I have an employee that leaves my employ because they need to care for a sick individual somewhere in their network, I can't follow up. And that's very funny, Eugene. EDD would help. Sure, of course. We're with the government. We're here to help. As Reagan said, those are the scariest 8 words in the world. And I'll pick on Elaine again because she's on my screen. But someone were to leave my employ or leave daily work with me under the idea that they needed to care for a sick family member, and then found that they had 10 hours a day available to them, they could go and get a job with Elaine. Elaine cannot coordinate with Jeff on who your previous employer is, right? And as long as that person doesn't put down that he's, under some sort of leave from me, who's going to be complaining? I can't ask. I can't follow up. I can't call my employee under the regulation. I can't call my employee and say, hey, is your uncle still sick? Without exposing my business to liability. And so there's no provision in there for follow-up from Elaine or from Jeff or from Stephanie or from anybody. No, and by the way, that is specifically part of the legislative record. Those issues, and I know that kind of sounds just kind of hoodoo guru Jeff Gibson talking. The legislative record is actually what the court would decide on when deciding what did the legislature mean when passing this piece of legislation. So people like me up in Sacramento entered that into the legislative record of you are creating a gigantic loophole here prone to abuse. And the legislature nodded and said, we don't consider that a loophole. This is an emergency. So as Bobby is saying, hang in there. We are happy warriors here because we continue to fight and continue to get these things thrown out. But I'm trying to give you a little bit of advice here on what's in the legislative record. So if you think, well, we can sue over it, no, because a judge then opens up the legislative record, reads it, here's what both sides have to say, and if it's not in that legislative record, then they're going to be overturned on appeal, even if they agree with us. So it's in the legislative record that the legislature knew you could be working 2 jobs, and pass the bill unamended for that.
Thank you. That concludes our Q&A.
Well, thank you so much for Jeff again for bringing this to our attention. As Bobby says, hang in there, everyone. This is why we're here. We fight for you on things like this. So we will be reaching out. Look for our emails for ways that you can participate on how to stop this. Bobby?
Yes, I'd like to just once again thank our sponsor for today, and that is Fresh Fitness Eastvale. They're a fairly new member with us, but they've been around for a while, and they've got some great meal prep, very tasty, very healthy conscious. They offer free and safe delivery. Learn more at freshfitnesseastvale.com. Kim?
Thank you, Bobby. If you would like to sponsor a future business briefing, please contact Bobby. Register now to join us next Wednesday for more advocacy news. Thank you again for attending today's briefing. Our meeting is adjourned.